Hello, all of my wonderful nonprofit whisperers out there. So excited to welcome you back to another wonderful episode. I hope that you have subscribed. I hope that you have subscribed below and that you've shared our channel with your friends and other individuals and colleagues that you know that are in the nonprofit sector and would benefit from this. Come on, share, be kind. I am very excited because for the first time, we are inviting a special guest onto our episodes here. And so with us today, we're going to have my friend, Mike Kim. Now, Mike is a brilliant, brilliant mind and has been in marketing for many years. Now, you might ask why? Oh, why, Erika? Are we having a whole other kind of person, especially on marketing? Well, if any of you, as you know, have worked in nonprofit for any amount of time, you understand how vital and how important marketing and branding is to the nonprofit sector and to basically anything happening anywhere in 2021 and beyond. And so I am happy to have Mike with us because he has an extremely impressive background and has worked with some very high profile names. And so I will let you get into the episode before sharing those, just so that you start to watch that episode. And so without further ado, you're going to have myself, your host, Erika Gerena, Jim Dempsey, the co-host, and then you're going to have Mike Kim join us and break down some very key marketing principles on how to better serve your nonprofit. You don't want to miss this one. So share it with your friends and stay tuned. Without further ado, let's get into it. So welcome back. Next episode. We're so excited. We had such a good time with Mike last time. We invited him back to come again. That's how we do here. So here we are, Nonprofit Whispers, Jim and I'm Erika, Jim, and Mike Kim, our special guest, marketing guru here with us. And so we're going to jump right in. We're going to unpack a little bit about marketing. However, in the context of audiences, this is a question nonprofits always have trouble in because you're segmenting your list out, or you're focusing on who your audience is, and you're doing these personas and all these other kinds of practices, which sometimes I'm like, what? I don't remember any of that stuff, or I didn't really learn any of that stuff myself. So anyways, I come from the school of hard knocks. I learned as I kind of went through things and then was like, oh, don't do that again. Or, oh, we could do that again. So, but you guys here, you guys have Mike, Jim, and I, so you're welcome in advance. But Mike, let's go a little bit let's go into audiences. Now, I, as a Latina, I'm often the only minority, and this is definitely a really hot topic right now, is diversifying and diversity and representation in organizations. And I know for a fact that this is something nonprofits have struggled in for forever. And so when we are talking about marketing and audiences and who do we have in mind and who we're thinking of, walk us through how we should actually be thinking about this.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I totally get that it's a challenge. And I think it's a good challenge. I think it shows that our society as a whole is opening up. And we're having these conversations because, we've got this whole new generation of people who've grown, young people who've grown up, and they see the world very differently than all of us do. Yeah. Right. And this is an important thing. So we're always on the throes of change. I think for me, and we covered this kind of on the last interview, it's all about opening a relationship. It's not about closing a sale. It's not about landing a donation. All of the marketing, the communication, the branding is all about opening a relationship. So if I were to reframe the question to someone who is heading up a nonprofit, I would ask them, so what do you think is the best way to open a relationship with XYZ community within your community, right? What would be the best way to open a relationship with Asians in your community or Latinas in your community, mm-hmm. right? And that is a better question that we can start with than how do we communicate to them so that they donate to us, right?
Exactly.
Because then it makes you think differently. There's a different path because now you're taking into consideration all of their cultural nuances and how they communicate and so on and so forth. So another thing that we can do is allow them to see themselves in what we put out there publicly in our nonprofit. But this goes beyond just putting a token Asian girl or token Asian guy, token Latino on the website. Okay, we've got to do a little bit better than that.
Yes.
And in the last session, we talked about storytelling and how important that is to nurture someone who's completely unaware as to why the organization exists. Well, guess what? The entire Asian community in a certain town may be completely unaware as to why they should care about homelessness in their society. And this is an opportunity to tell those stories. So everything always doubles down to stories and secrets, the first 2 steps of that 5-step process. And just as a refresher, if you guys didn't catch the first interview, definitely do it. But unaware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, and then they're aware. So our folks in all of these different minority communities, right? Or when we're speaking about diverse, because some towns are not, Caucasians are not the majority in certain cities.
Right.
They're the minority. I grew up in California and New Jersey. I mean, from town to town, they're different.
That's right.
So we need to tell stories. Of right now, as we're recording this, there's so many stories that what is being brought to awareness are these hate crimes against Asians. That is everywhere right now. But think about what I just said. What is the news media doing? What are people doing to raise awareness? They're telling stories. We instinctively do this. They don't just say we have to help Asian people. Most people say, well, they don't need any help. They're model minority, blah, blah, blah. How do we make the unaware problem aware? We share stories and we tell secrets. We share secrets. And by secrets, I mean insights. I saw this on social media the other day. Somebody commented, why Asians are model minority? Why would we even care about them? They can figure things out on their own. And then this lady who was running the social media account came back with a bunch of stats, insights, secrets on how many actually live in poverty in these big cities. People didn't know that.
That's right.
So it's just stories, secrets over and over again. Now, that is a story of victimization. And I'm not saying we have to harp on the negative note all the time, but we do need to share these stories. And Erika and Jim, I think that's just it's incumbent on us to do the hard work of understanding those nuances and communicating those stories so that other people support the endeavors, so that people from those groups support the endeavors, right? So that's where we would start, really.
Right. Is it putting a face to the problem, Mike, in that sense?
I think there is something to that, putting a face to a problem. But in a lot of scenarios, we can't share faces. Like earlier on the previous interview, I talked a lot about my friend Rob and his organization, Love 146, and they rescue kids out of the sex trade. They provide survivor care for kids rescued out of the sex trade. You can't put those faces on these brochures. No way. So what we're really looking for there, and that's a great question, Jim, because how do we bridge that gap? We need to find advocates. We need to find people who are going to do the evangelization, if you will, to that particular people group for our organization. I have been an evangelist, quote unquote, for that organization in my world of online marketing and to my customers and my followers. And the way I do that is I tell them a story, right? I connect the dots for them. And we covered this in the first session, but why do I care? Why do I, Michael Kim, care about that particular charity? What is the story I need to tell my people so I can introduce one friend to the other? I mean, Erika, you did that with Jim and I. You were the bridge between the two of us. Yeah. But it was you who filled that gap. And if I'm starting a nonprofit and I want to, or I have one, and I want to engage more of the Latina community, or I want to engage more of the Asian community in a certain endeavor or whatnot, I'm looking for one or two advocates who can represent our values and yet speak in a way that makes sense to that community and what they care about. And this is where it gets a little bit politically incorrect, and it can be that way. And I just want to assure you guys, it's okay. Because if you heard some of the things that we discuss, not here on this call, but that I discuss with clients, or what marketing campaigns, or what they really want to do behind closed doors, these conversations are more raw.
Right.
They are less politically correct.
Right.
If someone were to ask me, Mike, hey, the big Asian community in Fairfax and Falls Church, Virginia, near where you live, how do we engage that community to care about homelessness in their city and in the big retail areas? And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm just going to tell them they're bad for business. And it's like, what? Like, that's so they should just care from the heart. They care about their businesses, and they care about property values, and just talk. That's not the main driver,
right?
But let's share a story about how this is really becoming an issue, or educate. And we're not trying to scare them, Jim, into things. Right. I get that, but we do need to find that chord that really strikes at the heart of that particular community. Yeah.
That's so
not
good.
easy. It's not easy, but it's important.
No.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that I think a lot of donor and marketing teams kind of like bump heads over. It's the audiences and the segments, and like, how do you communicate with them? It's like, I know what I'm talking about. No, I know what I'm talking about. And then they're like, it's the same thing. No, it's not. So you kind of gave us some definition around marketing and things we should be thinking about, how we think about that audience. What is the biggest difference? What is the difference when I'm marketing to the general person that's interested in my organization versus when I'm trying to market and open up new networks and get my name out there on the donor side? What are the greatest differences?
Yeah, I think every organization has that organization story, which is, we shared, like, why does the organization exist? What is the big problem that they're trying to solve? And we all want our problems solved, but many people want them solved in many different ways. Okay. Because in any situation, you can look at age, race, gender, and cut the pie an infinite amount of ways, right? Affluence, how much money they're making, how many kids, the demographics are endless. So in that scenario, Erika, what I'm really looking at is, okay, don't get hung up too much on demographics. Let's look at this psychographically. And what I mean by psychographics are, how do people think? That's very different from demographics, which is who people are by age, gender, race, income, all that sort of thing. Because you can go to, let's say, a personal development seminar. We need some big guru, and you'll see a 17-year-old sitting next to a 70-year-old.
Right.
Their demographics are not similar at all, but the common bond they have, psychographics, how they think, how they see the world. This is why we tend to see so many big campaigns and their donor base is tied together by a common set of beliefs, right? Or a perspective of the world. So all we're doing is taking that perspective, we understand the perspective of this particular donor base. What's the perspective of the world on that particular donor base? And that's what I'm really, really looking for. And as a marketer, I would tell you this: I need both. I need both to make an effective campaign, create an effective campaign. I need as much information as I possibly can. Now, a lot of marketers will just look at demographics and they'll harp on that.
Right.
This is where most dollars are coming from. This is the message we have to hit. But the secondary or tertiary markets, how do we do that? We just replicate the process, but we're trying to figure out how they think. So let me give a different example here. And this is more a business example, but I think it's pertinent. Years ago, I was hired by Catalyst Leadership. They're a big training company for full-time ministries, right? So speaking, training, church growth, development, teams, all you name it. It's a big conference. They have events in Atlanta, Seattle, all over the country. And they called me up and said, Mike, we heard about you through our friend Don. He said, just listen to everything you say and do what you say. And I said, okay, cool. What's the issue? We're not getting enough people to our events. And I said, well, who are you marketing to? Everyone who's in some sort of vocational ministry. I was like, that's a lot of people. Yeah, we're struggling with how to communicate with everybody. But we also want to make sure that we hit everybody, and they all think they're different. Right. So young people in their scarves and skinny jeans playing the guitars, and then the other guys who are leading smaller churches in rural North America. Yeah. What do we do? So I was just trying to crunch my brain here, guys, and I was just like, okay, right. Well, what's the common thing that they all have that they all share? They're all leaders. Okay, that's number one. They all want to see their churches grow. Okay, that's number two. And they all want to get better. Honestly, they honestly want to get better at what they do. That's number three. So after, lots of coffee and sleepless nights, I was trying to find the one headline. And you remember on the last episode, I shared about how you have to learn how to say a lot in a little.
Yes.
And I headlined this thing on their homepage for their site. I said, you're never too young to be a great leader. You're never too old to be a better one. And I was like,
so good.
Well, that's perfect. Right? That's Kobe. Right? And you hit it, right?
And that's how you get a contract, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. And that's how you close the deal. Exactly.
And we were like, this is it. Because then we were able to put photos cross-generationally, cross-culturally all over their website. Yeah. I just had to pull and find the little thread that I could pull on. And how I got there wasn't looking at their demographics. It was, what are the things that everyone who attends these events have in common? What do they really want? How do they see the world? They believe the local church is the hope of the world. Okay, how do I pull on that? They believe they need to get better. Otherwise, they wouldn't go to a training conference. Okay, no one is getting on the Catalyst stage when there are 6,000 other people there. You're not going to make a name for yourself schmoozing with the conference coordinators in the aisle. There's clearly going there to meet old friends that they've gone to that event with for years and to learn and grow, right? And so I finally found that thread. We pulled on it. Attendance blew up that event, and they kept the slogan ever since, and good on them. So that's an example where as a marketer, I'm trying to find that thread. And then I'm working with folks who are on the donor side, the donor relationship side, the more fundraising strategy side, and saying, look, I don't want to be right. I want to get it right. This is the best I can give right now. Let's collaborate and work together. Yeah. And I know that's tough, but it's important that we kind of find those psychographic things, and it may take a little time to figure that out, Erika, right? Like to your point, and Jim, and to your point, in certain communities with trying to be more inclusive, trying to get different communities and ethnicities to support a cause, it takes some time and some patience to figure that out. But once you find it, it can bring everyone under that umbrella.
Yeah, and I love like how you mentioned that, because I'm like a student of my craft. I'm constantly learning. I love that. That was a brilliant example. I always tell the nonprofit sector, like, one thing that we lack is R&D, that business does right. Like they literally invest so much money in research and development. And as nonprofits, we don't have that department. It's like non-existent. And I'm like, how can you be innovators? How can we create things and create a path forward? How can we nurture that within our organizations in the next generation? If that's something that we don't highlight and we don't celebrate is research and development. It's so important. So when Mike is saying that, things as easy as like the Wall Street Journal, like think of like those psychographs, like when you're studying the behaviors and how your donors think and what they like to learn what they read. You can survey folks, learn what they read, where they study, where they like to go, for their research, where they've gone to school. There's so many different things that you can do to get into that world. Depending on how you like to learn, there's many different options to do that. Jim, did you have a question for Mike?
No, Mike, I talk to the nonprofit organization that still doesn't get it, that social media is important. I think there's some that just still think this is a passing fad. It's for one generation.
Yeah.
It'll be over soon if I just bury my head in the sand. It'll be over with.
That's me, by the way.
What's that?
Said that's me, by the way.
Oh, got it.
I'm that person.
Talk to the organization, the leader that, maybe spent 25, 30 years in the business world, is moving over, but they never saw a need for it then, but now they're feeling a need more than ever for marketing, getting their message out. Please speak to them and tell them what you would say about the importance of social media.
Yeah, and I would first say, Erika, you're not one of those folks because you're not a nonprofit organization. You're a consultant.
That's true.
You're an expert. So that's very different, right? So I just gotta say that.
See, he's my hype man. This is why I move around. Yeah, thank you. He freed me again.
Yeah, and so I would say this, Jim, to your question here on social media. When I look at marketing or getting a message out there, like you said, there are two types of campaigns that we run to get our message out there. And neither are more important than the other. Both are very important. There's just like two legs, right? And your campaigns have to stand on these two legs. One is an awareness campaign. And we just want people to get to hear about the organization, right? The second is at what we call in marketing a direct response campaign. And that's when we want them to take action, respond directly as a result of some piece of content, a social media post, an ad, an email, and take an action. Now, that action could be one of many things. Sign up for our newsletter, like our Facebook page, like our Instagram post, donate. It could be any one of those things. What has happened now as a result of social media, these two things are almost an indistinguishable mix of one another, right?
Yep.
Because if I want to get people onto our database for our organization or even for my business, what I need to do is go on social media, run a direct response ad to get them to join my email list, not buy something from me or not to donate. I've got to get them on my email list so I can bridge the gap. Because when's the last time any of us went on Facebook, found a nonprofit we never heard of and gave money? Don't happen. It does not happen. You got to get them onto your email list. What do you have to do? Tell them stories, share some secrets and insights, move them down that path that we've talked about. Then they ultimately give, right? So when a nonprofit says to me, social media doesn't exist, that in 2021 and beyond, that's like a business saying we don't need to advertise in the newspaper or on billboards or do interviews or do TV commercials. Right. And any savvy business person would say that's crazy. The one thing organizations never scale back on is their marketing budget. It's the one, once you go, you never really lower it. You just spend it in different ways. Right. So when it comes to social media and taking into account that Erika here is probably the youngest out of all three of us, right? And there you go. Right. We have an entire generation of people, all they use is social media. That is their email. That is their newspaper. That is their TV. Cable TV is down the tubes now. Nobody even uses it. Yeah. They just go on Netflix or, Hulu or Amazon Prime. Everything is on demand. And so if you see it, how people are behaving, the trends say people want everything on demand. And social media is the on-demand platform. I choose who I want to follow. I pick which channels I want to watch. I pay attention to which causes I want to pay attention to. And then once they say yes, it's a fight to stay top of mind, right? Top of mind awareness. So what that begs the question, how do we compete with all this noise? What do we do out there, right? So this is a kind of a funny example. Years ago, I worked as the chief marketing officer for an educational company just outside of New York City. And this was back in like 2011, 2012, 2013, around that time. And so social media was still growing, obviously. Facebook ads, all this stuff was around. And yet they were doing a lot of mail campaigns, direct mail campaigns, because they were a local business. So they knew the routes, they knew the neighborhoods, and they bought mailing lists, and we would send out mailers. And my boss asked me, what do we need to do to get more people from the local community into, our programs? I said, we need to respend the ad budget for direct mail. We're spending $400,000 a year on newspapers. This is a bad idea. And she goes, what do you think we should do? I was like, we should just mail them letters. And she looked at me, guys, like I had three heads. So how often should we mail the letters? I was like, once a week. And she's like, what do we even put in the letters? I was like, it doesn't even really matter. We just send them our envelope with our logo on it, right? I just want them to see our logo every week. And she just looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, Ann, I'm telling you, they're not going to open even 20% of the mail we send, but they're going to have seen our logo every week. Because what does everybody do with direct mail? They look at their mailbox, look at all the envelopes, and throw them out.
Yes.
So I just want them to see our logo. And I tell you what, in good faith, she trusted me, and she said, you're going to get fired. This doesn't work. Right? Business 6x'd over the first year that I took over marketing. And I didn't build a new website. We didn't spend $50,000 a month on Facebook ads. In fact, we spent almost nothing. We just took their ad budget, rechanneled it, because I understood how people were interacting with that medium. They just felt we need to spend tons of money on this really fancy brochure and send it out once a semester. That's what they did. Spring, summer, fall. I was like, that means all these people are only hearing from you 3 times a year. And it's so expensive because the stinking catalog is so big.
Oh, yeah.
You're spending $400K on this. Let me wind this down and just send a bunch of envelopes. And she couldn't believe what happened. And it was awesome. So what's the takeaway there? The principle is they had a big cannonball that they were shooting 3 times a year. I'm like, no, these direct mails, they're pieces, they're like little bullets. And we're going to chop this tree down. It's like death by 1,000 cuts instead of one fell swoop. That's, Jim, what social media is. That's how I would explain it. Now, that was a long-winded explanation, but that's how I would explain it. Social media, they're like little free bullets. And it's not like one is going to change everything. But over time, just chipping away. I'll tell you what, I left that company. They put 2 more locations after I worked there for 2 years. And, they still love me. It's been many years now, and they're doing great.
Well, we
That's
love
it.
you, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you were with us. We learned so much. I hope people will replay this over and over, share it a million times, and so that we can be 6x too,
There you go. Yeah.
But how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on social media, since we're talking about social media. If you use Instagram or LinkedIn, those are the 2 channels that I'm most active on. Just because, I like the DM features. It's easy, and we'll be able to check out each other's work and all that. So DM me there. I do have a podcast, which is more geared towards businesses and branding businesses. But if you're curious about that at all, it's called Brand You. It's been consistently ranked one of the top podcasts in the business space. I'm very humbled by that. And, or just email me. I'll give out my email here to this audience. It's just mike@mikekim.com. And I check that personally. So reach out if you have any questions. Be glad to be of service.
Well, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Mike.
We're so glad to have you. Jim, aren't you happy that Mike came on?
Yeah, Mike, thank you so much. This is just pearls of wisdom. It's terrific. So I know our listeners will love it. So appreciate that so much. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you subscribe. And the Nonprofit Whisperer is here to be there for you, to make a difference, and to help you grow. And individuals like Mike are there. Erika and I are out there to help you and to see you grow. So until next time, this is Jim and Erika and Mike saying goodbye. And we appreciate you all. Take care. Bye-bye.